Starts great after sitting all winter for 2 years, which because it's a Mack. I don't know where my love for fire trucks first began, whether it's me just loving heavy equipment or just me liking a good ladder. But I've been looking for a fire truck for a few years now for whatever reason. I've done some sealed bids on some. I've tried to buy some on auction. Hasn't worked out. So I'm on Facebook one day on the Spamfa Facebook group of antique fire apparatuses, and I see this raffle for a 1982 Mack to help out this guy's local bar. And I'm like, oh, great, I'll help this local bar, get a chance to win a fire truck. It's the best of both worlds. I buy a few tickets, a few weeks go by, I buy a few more tickets. I really get interested in the history of the truck, how it's from Millinocket, Maine. It was sold under the town's nose by the governor. Like, the town really wants it back. It was like their hometown hero. And this guy's like auctioning it off on the raffle. So I buy a few more tickets and then some more. Towards the end of the raffle, I was so heavily invested in it, I couldn't afford to lose it. So I buy some more, and I have like $300 into this raffle, which is great if I won. But if it's not, then it's like I'm out $300, which is a lot to me because I'm in college. So one day at work, I work as a tow truck driver, and I'm out towing stuff, and I get a phone call from a guy named Richie. And he's like, hey, Sean, how's it going? And I was like, oh, pretty good. Who's this? And he's like, hey, this is Richie with the fire truck raffle. Just letting you know that you won. And I was like, whoa, really? Well, I kind of can't talk right now, but I'll call you back. And he's like, okay, great. At this point, all I knew really about the fire truck was that it ran when it was parked. It's been sitting in a field for like 2 months in the winter. So I call Richie back, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll come out next weekend. I'll take a look at it. I'll try and bring some tools. I'll stop at my friend's place. We'll come over there and we'll try and get it fixed up. And he's like, all right, great. So now that I own the fire truck, it's several states away. I have to figure out how to get it here. I get some quotes for transporting it out here, and it's like several $1,000s because it's a 40,000 pound, 49-foot long straight axle truck that needs oversized permits. So I was like, oh, well, the cheapest thing is to do is just drive it. So I fly out there the first weekend, and I call my buddy Carl up, who lives a few towns away. And I'm like, hey, Carl, what are you doing this weekend? And he was like, and I'm like, well, you're coming with me to get this fire truck. So we go down there, take a look at the fire truck, go to this bar, talk it out. I go to Tractor Supply, I get new batteries. It takes 4 6-volt batteries. And we find out it needs new tires. So I was tracking down tires for like an entire week. I get tires and rims, so we're all set. We go out there with the hope of like, hey, we're gonna get this thing running and we're gonna drive it back. It turns out it's not the case. We get it all wired up, start it. Starts great after sitting all winter for 2 years, which because it's a Mack. However, we find out that it doesn't move. Put it in gear, clutch in, nothing, doesn't even budge at all. We get it to barely rock, and that's about it. So I call my buddy Conrad, who knows about heavy duty equipment, and he walks me through how to adjust the clutch cable on the phone, several states away. And we get it to start to rock out of the ditch a little bit, and we get it to get enough momentum up the hill and onto the main road. So we're pretty much set. So we knew that this little tiny hill is nothing compared to the mountainous roads that were ahead of us. So we knew it was not going to make it. We get it to the top of the hill. We're able to adjust the clutch cable a little bit more. The ultimate goal is to get it back to Kansas, which is 1,200 miles away. But we knew that was not going to happen at all. So we had to get it back to his shop where his neighbor, the heavy-duty mechanic, can get it taken care of for me. So it was a 70-mile drive going about 10 miles an hour the entire way, with one of my rotator lights on that I didn't even know was on, and 2 miles of traffic behind me, again, the entire way. Clutch cable was still acting up. There were times where we couldn't even get it out of gear, couldn't get it into gear. We were just rolling downhill. Stalled several times on the on and off ramps of the highway. It felt like we were driving through a model train exhibit. Like, we felt like the biggest thing ever in this tiny little town of Maria, Pennsylvania. But we made it, and we got it back to his shop, and called his heavy-duty mechanic friend down the road the next day, and he came and took a look at it. At this point, I wasn't really ready to tell Carl, but I kind of knew in the back of my head that this thing was going to sit there for potentially a year, and I didn't want to say that to his face, so I kind of just was like, all right, I'll come back next week and I'll see what I can do. So I dropped the truck off at Chris at J&R Truck Repair near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And he did a fantastic job getting it ready for me in a week, changing out the clutch cable and swapping over the tires, doing an inspection and greasing the entire thing up. And he felt it was pretty comfortable for us to go back on. So a week after that, I flew out, and my friend Matthew and I drove it all the way back. So not a year later, a week later, the truck's actually ready, and we're off with hopes for Kansas, but we're planning to hit Indianapolis that first night. The truck was geared for Millinocket, Maine, and it was like a mining and paper town. So it was a really low gearing ratio. So the truck only went 44 miles an hour in top speed, which was not very fun on the 80-mile-an-hour highways around there. Driving that thing was quite the experience. It was a mix of feeling like I was going to die and feeling like I was invincible. Going up these 6 to 9% grades was quite the feat, going 10 miles an hour. And going down at about 54 miles an hour, redlining the entire way, was not quite enjoyable and was definitely white knuckling the entire way. When we're driving through Ohio, we stop at a gas station, fill up, I get some oil, come back out, and I see this driver of a semi-truck tractor underneath my truck looking it over with my friend. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, I used to build these trucks back in the day. And he was going through the entire truck, going all the knobs, talking about how everything worked, what he used to do. It was kind of cool. So as we're driving this thing, we don't really know what the legality is of me driving a 40,000-pound fire truck with air brakes with no CDL. My friend Matthew was on Trucker Path, checking the status of all the scales on the way, making sure that there were no cops. We ended up passing 2 or 3 scales that had troopers on the end of it, and we just went on by and had no problem because it's a fire truck and it looks like it's pretty legit. So after one 17-hour day of that and another 17-hour day of that, we finally make it back to McPherson, Kansas. So today, I've had the fire truck about 6 months now. I had the aerial cylinders rebuilt, gone through some of the hydraulic stuff, so I trust it pretty much. The 106-foot ladder works pretty well in changing my friend's light bulbs. And I'm going to continue to use it, just daily driving it, getting coffee, and using it for parade use and just driving it around. It's a daily truck. Amazingly, the thing only had 8,000 miles when I got it. So now it's got about 11,000 miles on it, which is pretty incredible to think that I've put like 25% of the miles on that truck. But I think it's probably good for another 100,000. So naturally, I had to fill the thing up with water and try and spray some water with it, but it wasn't really that eventful. And the ladder is pretty much the greatest part in that thing. So I pretty much just fly the ladder and watch the sunset.